Okay, so as you can see, our presentation is on marijuana. Our agenda for today consists of an overview in which I will briefly describe the topic, demographics of which groups use the drug the most. We'll explain some theories related to the drug, what effects marijuana has on their users, the pros and cons of the marijuana drug laws, and the conclusion. So overview. So here's a brief overview of what we will learn from this presentation. We'll begin by introducing the drug and its primary users. So who uses marijuana? Marijuana is one of the most popular recreational drugs and is enjoyed by many, but is predominantly used by white males within the ages of 18 to 29. As for the effects of marijuana, the short-term effects include impaired short-term memory, motor coordination, and poor judgment. Whereas the long-term effects include heightened risk of addiction, cognitive impairment, and altered brain development. Throughout our presentation, we'll also discuss social consequences and implications, which include the impact of academic performance and general productivity. Unlike most of the other drugs we have discussed in this course, marijuana is legalized in 11 states. There has been both positive and negative impacts caused by the legalization of the drug, which we'll get into later in the presentation. But some of the impacts include health effects, crime rates, and financial benefits. So what is marijuana? Marijuana is a psychoactive drug derived from the cannabis plant. It has a number of nicknames and is more commonly referred to as weed, pot, bud, ganja, or grass. The main psychoactive ingredient, or the chemical that actually causes a high in cannabis, is tetrahydrocannabinol, also known as THC. THC is found in resin produced by the plant. The resin can be found in the buds or leaves of the plant. Marijuana is used both recreationally and medicinally and is most commonly smoked, although the active ingredient can also be mixed into a number of different foods, which are referred to as edibles. Demographics. So as I mentioned before, marijuana is very regularly used and is enjoyed by many of all ages and backgrounds. Not surprisingly, it is the most widely used illegal substance in the US. So as you can see, it is quite popular among young adults. This graph shows that based on the survey conducted in 2019, we found that the substance is most popular among young adults within the ages of 18 and 29, with 22% of the respondents stating that they use marijuana regularly. So another survey conducted in 2016 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration found that roughly 80% of 55-year-olds had tried marijuana at least once in their lifetime. This graphic displays the gender gap in marijuana usage, which shows that men are more likely to use marijuana than women at every age level. And men aged 26 and older are twice as likely to use marijuana as their female counterparts. According to another survey, white males make up the majority of all marijuana users in the United States.
Okay, so moving on to the theories. The first theory that I'm going to talk about is the social learning theory. And this is basically where an individual associates with a group where their attitude towards marijuana becomes more frequent, which then the likelihood of that individual's use of marijuana in association with that drug will increase. And this is kind of because the perceived reward of smoking marijuana is a lot higher than what people perceive the risks to be. And they learn this through direct interaction with smoking marijuana or observing others and their friends smoking marijuana. And then on the right, the kind of picture shows the cognitive, environmental, and behavioral factors that go into an individual's behavior towards smoking marijuana. The next theory that I want to talk about is a social bonding perspective, which is basically where an individual, if they have a strong social bond between their family and friends, then the likelihood of them doing marijuana or smoking marijuana is a lot smaller. And then vice versa, if they have a weak social bond with their family and friends, then there's going to be an increase of that deviant behavior. And then youth will resist the temptation of using drugs because of these close-knit bonds and the belief that marijuana will jeopardize their relationships. And then prior studies have also shown that if a child's bond with a parent weakens, then so does that buffer that acts against the temptation of smoking marijuana. And then this next slide kind of shows the 4 different types of social bonding. The first one is attachment, and this is basically where if my parent finds out that I am smoking marijuana, then they're just going to be really disappointed in me, so I'm not going to do it. The second one is commitment, which is I've already committed so much time and energy in my sport that if I do smoke marijuana, then I'm going to throw it all away because a positive drug test will get me kicked out of my sport or get me kicked out of school. The third one is involvement. So this is basically I don't have time to go hang out with these people. So if you don't have time to hang out with individuals that smoke marijuana or use marijuana, then you're also less likely to do it yourself because you're not engaging with that environment or that behavior. And then the fourth one is belief. So if I believe or my family believes that marijuana is bad and I believe that it's bad for me, then I'm not going to do it because I'm scared of smoking that drug.
Okay, so now we'll talk about the effects of marijuana. And to start off with the short-term physical consequences, some of these effects include impaired short-term memory, which makes it difficult to learn and retain information. Another one is impaired motor coordination, which interferes with driving skills and thus increases the risk of injuries. Another one is altered judgment, which increases the risk of sexual behaviors that facilitates the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases. And in some cases, when a marijuana user decides to take it in a high dose due to the drug making their 5 senses become extremely sensitive, it overwhelms their sensory input and thus can lead to paranoia and psychosis in some extreme situations. And could you go to the last slide? There was a long-term consequence. Oh yeah, so some long-term physical effects. It's important to note that the stereotype that anyone who uses marijuana immediately gets addicted to it is not true at all. It is a possibility though to get addicted to this drug, but it also depends on how quickly your body processes THC and how often and how long you use it. So for addiction, only about 9% of users overall become addicted, and 17% of those people began use in adolescence, and 25 to 50% of them are daily users. You also see altered brain development, poor educational outcome with the increased likelihood of dropping out of school, cognitive impairment with lower IQ among those frequent users during adolescence, and overall diminished life satisfaction and achievement. However, this is all on subjective measures, so we cannot say for sure how accurate it is. And for those who take the drug through smoking, symptoms of chronic bronchitis have shown in these individuals as well. And for psychological consequences, the main question is, why do these people use it? And although there's many reasons why people use it, such as controlling nausea for a cancer patient going through chemo, a majority of these individuals use it for recreational purposes to get the high from these drug effects for pleasure. And what's unique about this drug is that you can ingest it in many different ways. You can smoke it, vape it, drink it, or even eat it. And the main psychoactive agent in this drug is THC, which stimulates the part of your brain that responds to pleasure, such as food or sex. And this unleashes a chemical called dopamine. And because of this chemical release, it gives you a euphoric, relaxed feeling. Depending on how you take it, for example, if you vape or smoke weed, the THC can get into your bloodstream quickly enough for you to feel the high in minutes or even seconds. And usually the THC level peaks in about 30 minutes, and the effects usually wear off between 1 to 3 hours. Now, if you drink or eat the drug, it may take many hours for the body to process the THC, thus makes it much longer for you to sober up. And also, you may not always know how potent your recreational marijuana might be, and that also goes for medical marijuana, which is why there's many factors that determines how quickly your body reacts to this drug.
All right, so I'm going to talk more about the social consequences of marijuana use. So firstly, marijuana has been shown to negatively affect academic performance of both adolescents and college students. This one study found that increased marijuana usage could predict a decline in GPA, and this could have been due to the frequency of skipped classes. And the study's model also found that marijuana use predicted an increased time until college graduation. Another study found that in comparison to abstainers and users who had started using marijuana later in life, persistent marijuana users were more likely to experience higher prevalence of substance use disorders, higher likelihood of having been incarcerated in the past 10 years, and high rate of major depressive disorder. These results could have been due to the differences in academic performance, social adaptation, and formation of social bonds, which are all factors that can be affected depending on whether someone uses marijuana or not. And academic performance can be affected in the ways I just stated now. And then the marijuana use can result in living a deviant lifestyle, which could affect someone's like social adaptation and formation of social bonds. Finally, it was found that chronic marijuana users were more likely to be associated with unemployment and incapacitation at work. And there are several things that could explain this, such as psychosocial failure, which basically encompasses educational failure and engagement with crime. And incapacitation at work could also be explained by diminished cognitive functioning as a result of marijuana use, which can lead to limited ability to perform work-related tasks. There's also evidence that continued use of marijuana can lead to changes in the structure and function of the brain, which again could interfere with these work-related tasks. The same study also found that chronic marijuana users were more likely to experience financial instability and financial dependence. This may have been because marijuana use increases the chance of someone adopting an unconventional lifestyle, which would disengage them from social norms, such as completing an education. And early marijuana use was also found to be associated with leaving school early, and less completed education is associated with financial dependence. And then lastly, the study found that chronic marijuana use was also associated with an increased likelihood of experiencing a hostile social environment and increased likelihood that a marijuana user's coworkers also use the drugs. So this suggests that someone's drug use can affect who they choose to associate themselves with, and these individuals may be drawn to each other because of their shared attitudes, beliefs, and values. And then with all of that being said, it's important to keep in mind that these consequences of marijuana aren't universal, and they're not the same for everybody who uses the drug. So studies are still ongoing about the effects of marijuana, and different studies have found different results depending on things like how the researchers controlled for different variables. So, yeah.
And I'm going to be talking about the drug laws, which is, in this case, legalization of marijuana. Legalization began starting in Colorado in 2012 for recreational marijuana, whereas medical marijuana use has been prevalent far before the process for recreational started. In addition to Colorado, there are 10 other states and Washington, D.C. that have legalized the use of recreational weed. in the US. Additionally, only 8 states do not allow any use of the drug at all, with the rest of them allowing use of medical marijuana in some state, whether it be through CBD oil or the actual medical marijuana. And this number is only going to increase in future years, as in the near future, there are 4 states that have votes for medical marijuana on the ballot for this upcoming election. And with the increased use, or with the increased legislation, these states have seen an increase in use among all age groups, except for young kids through grades 8 through 12. For some of the health effects of this legislation, the number of ER visits related to marijuana have increased in recent years, with specifically in Colorado, has increased by 40% among the residents. This isn't including people from out of states that have traveled to Colorado to get treatment. But this number is often very misleading, as it doesn't account for the increased use of marijuana in the state, as well as the willingness of people to go seek out treatment because of the decreased fear of being criminalized for using the drug. Additionally, the weed has become safer with legislation, as there's increased regulation of the drug, which is seen in which is caused by a strict level of THC allowed into the marijuana that's being sold legally. And in terms of treatments, people are more likely to seek out treatment for substance abuse for marijuana, which is an increase among every state that has allowed legislation for legalization. Hospitalizations for opioids have also increased, which is a worrying sign. But overall, the number of overdoses for opioids has not increased relative to the national average, showing that the hospitalization for opioids is most likely just because of people are more willing to get treatment for these issues when there's less criminalization around for drugs in general. In terms of crime, illegal drug markets have actually grown in recent years in some of these areas because of the new availability of being able to grow weed legally. A statement from the DEA actually shows that Mexican cartels have actually begun to produce weed in Colorado instead of shipping weed there. And then they're, from there on, shipping the marijuana to different states and different countries. And additionally, only about 20% of the marijuana grown in California is actually legal, and with the rest being shipped elsewhere among the US and internationally. Illegally grown marijuana has increased from 700,000 pounds to 1.6 million pounds in the US because of the demand for the drug in recent years. And this is worrisome, as there's not been shown for the legalization to actually have a decrease, but with hopes are that with increased legislation and legalization of the drug, there's going to be less impact from the market, from the black market, from drugs, with the easier access to legal weed. In terms of possession and sales, the number of arrests has actually decreased dramatically by as much as 98% in Washington, D.C., and about greatly decreasing the rest of the states, which is putting less people in prisons and just making it less fearful in many areas. Finally, DUI arrests and DUIs involving THC have greatly decreased in 2 stages after legalization. The first being immediately after legalization happens, and the second being after retail sales are started in the states. Finally, the financial benefits of legalization are less costs for the state, as the state doesn't have to spend as much money prosecuting and putting forward law enforcement costs to fight the drug being illegal. Second being, tax revenues from the sales are then put into the states in terms of investments into education systems as well as treatment centers. Additionally, states have begun to invest in this money into the communities that were affected the most by the drug treatments, by investing into jail aversion and job placement for people affected by these drugs. Part-time and full-time jobs have also increased greatly in these areas, with estimates being somewhere between 165,000 and 230,000 part-time and full-time jobs being created in this market in this country.
All right, so now we're going to do our conclusion and takeaway points. So whether someone uses marijuana can depend on their peers and whether people close to them use the drug, because as you're exposed to the drug more, you're more likely to use it. This is also because marijuana use can result from learning through direct interactions with the drug or observing how other people react to the drug. And when people see that perceived reward of using marijuana is higher than the cost of using it, that makes them want to use the drug even more. The next point is that there are also several different ways to use marijuana, and they all differ in how long it takes for your body to process the drug and how long it takes for your body to feel the effect. But all of the methods of using marijuana result in the main psychoactive ingredient, THC, stimulating the part of your brain that responds to pleasure. So therefore, people use marijuana for a variety of reasons, but mainly they use it recreationally to get high for that euphoric, relaxed feeling. And marijuana use can result in both short-term and long-term effects, but chronic use can negatively affect various aspects of someone's life, such as their education, lifestyle, and work. And then our last point is that the legalization of marijuana still remains a pretty controversial topic that has seen both beneficial and harmful effects in the states that have legalized the drug. All right, and these are references. Thank you.